The Middle East is once again standing at the edge of a moment that could redefine the region's balance of power. Overnight, smoke rose above Tehran as Israel confirmed it had launched what it described as a preemptive strike targeting Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile infrastructure. Israeli officials framed the operation as a necessary move to neutralize immediate threats. But the response was swift. Iran condemned the strikes and within hours confirmed it had launched ballistic missiles targeting multiple U.S. military installations across the Gulf. Among the reported targets were bases in Qatar, Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain. Regional air defense systems were activated as explosions were reported. This is no longer a contained exchange. Air raid sirens, evacuation warnings, and emergency responses are now part of daily reality in several cities. Civilians across the region are facing deep uncertainty while governments assess damage and prepare for potential escalation. Iranian officials have promised a decisive response to further aggression. What makes this moment especially sensitive is its timing. Just months ago, Israel and Iran engaged in a brief but intense 12-day air confrontation. Since then, indirect diplomatic talks between the United States and Iran had offered a narrow opening for de-escalation. Now those fragile channels appear overshadowed by renewed military action. The United States has confirmed coordinated operations alongside Israel, significantly raising the stakes. Any prolonged exchange risks pulling additional regional actors into the conflict. The Gulf is a critical artery for global energy supplies, and analysts warn that sustained escalation could disrupt markets and shipping routes worldwide. At the same time, major questions remain. How far is each side willing to go? Are these calibrated strikes meant as a warning or the beginning of something broader? The coming hours may determine whether this crisis spirals further or settles into uneasy deterrence. For now, the situation remains fluid. Military forces are on high alert, governments are urging restraint while the international community calls for de-escalation. All eyes are on Tehran, Jerusalem, and Washington as the region braces for what could become a defining moment in Middle Eastern geopolitics. Behind the military movements lies a deeper strategic calculation. Both sides are attempting to project strength without triggering a full-scale regional war, yet history shows that rapid retaliation cycles can quickly escape political control, especially when national security narratives dominate public discourse. Regional allies are now reassessing their positions. Gulf states hosting U.S. bases face increased security risks, while global powers monitor developments closely. The possibility of miscalculation, whether through faulty intelligence, interception failure, or escalation by proxy groups, remains a serious concern. Energy markets are reacting cautiously but nervously. Even limited disruptions in the Gulf can influence oil prices and global supply chains. Investors and policymakers alike are watching shipping routes and airspace restrictions for signs of broader instability. Diplomatic backchannels may now become the most critical battlefield. Quiet negotiations, intelligence coordination, and third-party mediation efforts could determine whether this confrontation stabilizes or intensifies. The window for de-escalation may be narrow, but it has not completely closed. As the world watches, uncertainty defines the moment. Military capability, political will, and diplomatic endurance are all being tested simultaneously. What unfolds next will shape not only Israel-Iran relations, but the strategic architecture of the Middle East for years to come. Civilians remain at the center of this crisis, facing uncertainty, displacement, and fear as sirens wail and explosions echo across cities. Emergency services are stretched thin, trying to respond to damaged sites while preparing for potential follow-up attacks. The human impact of this confrontation is immediate and profound. Analysts warn that continued escalation could draw in additional regional actors, creating a broader, more unpredictable conflict. Proxy groups, alliances, and strategic partnerships could amplify the stakes beyond the initial Israel-Iran exchange, turning a localized confrontation into a regional crisis. The coming hours are critical. Will diplomacy find a foothold, or will military action dictate the course? Every decision, from missile launches to evacuation orders to back-channel negotiations, will influence the trajectory of this crisis. The world is watching closely, aware that the consequences extend far beyond the Gulf. For now, Tehran, Jerusalem, and Washington remain in sharp focus. The Middle East braces for what could become a defining moment in its modern history. The balance between escalation and restraint hangs by a thread, and the next moves will shape the region and the world for years to come. International actors are calling for restraint, urging both sides to avoid actions that could spiral into a wider conflict. Yet with tensions so high and military assets on full alert, the margin for error is dangerously small. Every miscalculation could have far-reaching consequences. Meanwhile, ongoing diplomatic efforts hang in the balance. Indirect negotiations in Geneva and upcoming technical discussions in Vienna face unprecedented pressure. Military confrontations now threaten to overshadow months of careful diplomatic groundwork, making compromise and dialogue more difficult than ever. The strategic calculus is complex. Deterrence, regional influence, and national security concerns collide with civilian safety, economic stability, and international norms. Each action taken by Israel, Iran, or allied powers will reverberate across political, economic, and humanitarian domains. As the world watches, one thing is clear. This is a pivotal moment. The coming hours and days will determine whether escalation continues or whether diplomacy and restraint can regain a foothold. For now, the Middle East remains on edge, with the eyes of the global community fixed firmly on Tehran and Jerusalem. Observers stress that even small incidents could trigger disproportionate responses. A single misfired missile, a misinterpreted maneuver, or a delayed warning could escalate tensions within minutes. The region's delicate balance hangs on rapid communication and calculated restraint. Global powers are monitoring closely, aware that the ripple effects could reach far beyond the Middle East. Energy markets, international trade routes, and global security dynamics are all vulnerable to disruption. Stability in this region is no longer just a regional concern, it is a matter of worldwide significance. Civilians' voices are largely unheard amid the military and political narratives, yet their experiences reflect the immediate human cost of this confrontation. Fear, uncertainty, and disruption of daily life are tangible reminders that the consequences of conflict extend far beyond strategy rooms and government briefings. In the coming hours, every diplomatic signal, military posture, and public statement will be analyzed for clues. Will the escalation continue, or will restraint and negotiation prevail? The answers will shape the trajectory of Middle Eastern geopolitics for the foreseeable future. For now, vigilance is paramount. Authorities remain on high alert, emergency services are mobilized, and the international community continues to call for calm. The world watches, recognizing that this moment could define the region's history, and the stakes could not be higher. Strategists argue that both sides are attempting to control the narrative as much as the battlefield. Public messaging, official statements, and media framing are shaping perceptions domestically and internationally. In crises like this, information becomes a strategic asset. Military readiness across the region remains elevated. Naval deployments, air patrols, and missile defense systems are operating under heightened protocols. Even nations not directly involved are reinforcing security measures, wary of spillover risks or indirect consequences. At the same time, economic stakeholders are bracing for volatility. Insurance costs for shipping, energy transport security, and regional investment confidence may all be affected if tensions persist. Financial markets often react faster than diplomacy can respond. Yet despite the intensity of the moment, pathways to de-escalation still exist. Quiet diplomacy, third-party mediation, and strategic pauses have historically prevented broader wars. Whether those mechanisms can function under current pressure remains uncertain. Ultimately, this crisis represents more than a military exchange. It is a test of deterrence, diplomacy, and regional stability. The next decisions made in Tehran, Jerusalem, and Washington will not only shape immediate outcomes, they may define the strategic landscape of the Middle East for a generation. Security analysts emphasize that prolonged escalation could alter long-standing alliances and defense doctrines. Nations may reassess intelligence cooperation, missile defense investments, and regional partnerships depending on how this confrontation unfolds. There is also the question of proportionality. Each strike invites comparison. Each response invites counter-response. The challenge for decision-makers is maintaining deterrence without crossing thresholds that make de-escalation politically impossible. Public opinion inside the countries involved will play a powerful role. National unity, political pressure, and perceptions of strength or vulnerability could influence the next phase of actions. Domestic dynamics often shape foreign policy choices in moments of crisis. Meanwhile, humanitarian organizations are preparing contingency plans if the conflict expands. Displacement, infrastructure damage, and supply chain disruptions could intensify rapidly. Planning for worst-case scenarios is already underway. For now, uncertainty dominates. Military postures are firm, rhetoric is strong, and diplomatic space is shrinking. Whether this moment becomes a short-lived escalation or the beginning of a deeper regional confrontation will depend on choices made in the immediate future. Regional communication channels are reportedly active, with intermediaries attempting to prevent further escalation. Even during open confrontation, discreet diplomatic exchanges often continue behind the scenes, seeking off-ramps before positions harden irreversibly. Military analysts caution that escalation does not always follow a linear path. Conflicts can intensify suddenly, but they can also plateau into tense standoffs. The current trajectory remains unclear, making real-time assessments both critical and challenging. Cybersecurity experts are also on alert. In modern conflicts, cyber operations frequently accompany kinetic strikes. Disruptions to communications networks, infrastructure systems, or financial platforms could become part of the broader strategic contest. Regional airspace restrictions and maritime advisories are expanding. Commercial airlines and shipping companies are adjusting routes, reflecting the seriousness of the situation. Even limited military exchanges can reshape civilian movement patterns almost instantly. Ultimately, the defining factor may be restraint. Power projection is visible, but strategic patience could prove decisive. Whether leaders prioritize escalation dominance or crisis management will determine how this chapter in Middle Eastern geopolitics is written. Political leadership now faces a narrow window for decision-making. Escalation may satisfy immediate security objectives, but it also increases unpredictability. Balancing deterrence with long-term stability is becoming more complex by the hour. International institutions are expected to convene emergency consultations, seeking coordinated responses and renewed calls for calm. Multilateral engagement, though often slow, could provide a framework to prevent further deterioration. Regional populations are watching closely, navigating daily life under heightened uncertainty. Schools, businesses, and transportation networks operate under contingency measures, reflecting how quickly geopolitical tension filters into ordinary routines. Military planners on all sides are likely recalculating risk assessments in real time. Each intercepted missile, each confirmed strike, and each public statement feeds into a rapidly evolving strategic picture that remains incomplete. For now, the situation stands at a crossroads. Escalation remains possible, but so does containment. The next signals, military or diplomatic, will indicate whether this confrontation deepens or stabilizes. The world continues to watch, aware that the stakes extend far beyond the immediate battlefield. Intelligence communities are working continuously to interpret movements on the ground and in the air. Satellite imagery, radar data, and communications intercepts are shaping the assessments guiding political leadership. In moments like this, accurate information can prevent dangerous assumptions. Regional deterrent strategies are being tested in real time. Missile defense systems, rapid response protocols, and alliance commitments are no longer theoretical. They are operational realities under pressure. The effectiveness of these systems may influence future security planning. At the diplomatic level, messaging remains cautious but firm. Public statements emphasize defense and necessity while leaving limited room for compromise. How rhetoric evolves in the coming hours could either widen divisions or quietly open space for dialogue. Economic forecasting models are already adjusting for risk scenarios. Even if the confrontation stabilizes quickly, investor confidence and regional growth projections may feel lasting effects. Stability, once shaken, can take time to restore. This moment underscores how interconnected security, economics, and diplomacy truly are. A military decision in one capital can ripple across continents within hours. The next phase of this crisis will test not only regional resilience, but the broader international system's capacity to manage escalation.